of today's newspapers. And in the Eye newspaper, Ian Birrell says the Tories are in dismal shape, but a revival of the big society could hand real control to local communities and give the party a boost. In The Guardian, the Remain campaigner Gina Miller says, listen up, Tories, time is running out and super candidate Brexit is absurd. It's a festival of Brexit Britain in Ben Jennings' cartoon, also in The Guardian, but presumably not quite the one Theresa May envisaged. The weather's miserable and the rides are falling apart. The Chancellor, Philip Hammond, makes his big speech in conference shortly. Don't expect a picture of post-Brexit prosperity from Eeyore, says Trevor Kavanagh in a fierce attack. A leadership and cabinet adrift from the membership. That's Quentin Lett's view of the Conservatives in the Daily Mail. But it's not all doom and gloom for the Tories. Leah McKinstry in the Express says the party's programme of toughness on Brexit, crime and borders could be a vote winner. Well, joining me today to look through all those are the Conservative commentator Tim Montgomery and the Observer's chief leader writer Sonia Sodha. Welcome to you. Now, Sonia, we got all sorts of journalists. I mean, Ian Birrell there, we've got Matthew Dancona, we've got Kevin Maguire, all saying the Tory party are in a mess. I mean, who's put their finger on it? Or are they all wrong?
Well, I think they're right, actually. I think the Tory party is in a mess. But what's interesting is there's a bit of a division about the prescription for what the Conservatives could do. So you've got Matthew Dancona and Ian Birrell saying very strongly in their columns that it's a real lack of ideas that's the problem for the Tory party. So it's all consumed by Brexit, and there's a lack of ideas on the domestic agenda. You had Theresa May give her speech on the steps of Downing Street saying she was going to fight the burning injustices of this country on her way in to be Prime Minister in Downing Street. And that really hasn't materialised. There aren't the ideas coming out to match some of the ideas that we saw from Labour last week. But then you've also got the column in the Express, which is actually arguing, no, we don't need any of these new ideas. It's just about old-fashioned conservatism, plain and simple, crime, immigration. We just need to stick with that. And I really don't buy that view. I think if the Conservatives want to get somewhere, they've got to try and come up with some ideas to match what Labour came up with last week, to really address people who are very angry in the wake of the financial crisis and haven't seen a pay rise or a decent pay rise in the last 10 years.
What do you think, Tim?
I'm afraid I'm not going to agree too much with
Well, you're an ideas man. I mean, you're a man who's come up with a lot of ideas.
Well, it's kind of you to say so, and it's clear I don't agree with them, but Labour are buzzing with ideas. And you can't win a battle of ideas if you don't have any ideas. And Theresa May and Philip Hammond is the worst possible combination, really. They're both really managerialist politicians. Yes, Leah McKinstry is right. Tory policies on crime and immigration are popular. But 10 years after the crash, stagnant wages, job insecurity, the concentration of so much wealth in London away from small towns. The Tories, if they do not address this, they're in real trouble.
But what could they say? I mean, take small towns, which Labour focused on in its broadcast that a lot of people have praised. What would be a Conservative offer for Mansfield or Skegness or wherever?
Well, it begins with things like broadband, potholes, local railway services, local bus services. Buses are hugely neglected as part of economies, and I think we need to either reprioritise money. London gets a huge chunk of the national spending on infrastructure. That needs to be changed radically. And if the next general election is in 2022, the Tories will live in power for 12 years. They can't wait till the eve of the election to promise change. They have to start implementing it now so that voters could begin to see the fruits by the time they vote. And that means, as long as Theresa May is still in number 10, time is ticking and being lost to get that done.
Does that mean more big society, David Cameron's idea?
I'm not so sure about the big society. Where I think the Conservatives should be focusing their efforts is really young people. The Conservatives have got a massive age problem. They really don't do well amongst young voters. Housing, but not just that, actually. I'd also say, well, look at young people who don't get to go to university. Young people who go to university get a massive subsidy from the state to have that social transition.
A subsidy that Labour wants to increase.
That is true.
And so ridiculously.
Something that would be interesting from the Conservatives if they were to say, well, that £20,000 or so that we subsidise young people who go to university, we're actually going to make that available for young people who don't go to university as well.
I imagine they would say, well, look at the apprenticeship levy, look at what we're trying to do there.
I don't think it goes far enough, and I think if you look at a lot of the evaluations of apprenticeship schemes, then there's a lot of apprenticeships out there that aren't super high quality, and what young people who don't go to university need is a really decent offer and significant funds invested in. And I think that would be a no-brainer, for example, from the Conservatives, but I doubt that we're going to see really innovative thinking like that this week.
And boldness. The big housing announcement, big in inverted commas, that Theresa May made after a year ago saying that the housing crisis was her #1 mission, was 40,000 homes. We need 300,000 homes in a year, and this was 40,000 homes over 7. This country faces pound-sized problems, and she only ever brings penny-sized solutions to the fight, and the time is running out.
Now, a very punchy column, almost vicious, from Trevor Kavanagh about Philip Hammond. You would agree with Trevor Kavanagh, would you, that Philip Hammond's part of the problem?
Well, what, Adam, and I know you can't answer this question, but you can think of almost every chancellor in recent times who did some big, memorable things, on both sides of politics. What has Philip Hammond done with his time as chancellor? It's cautious, it's managerial. He's the Eeyore of the government, as Trevor.
But you see, his defenders would say that actually there have been 100 billion of promises made by Theresa May, and he's managed to find the money for those without busting borrowing requirements, and therefore that's the sort of thing. I mean, sounds boring and great, but that's what chancellors are there to do.
But the promises that Theresa May made actually were all tramline promises. On those steps of Downing Street first, she said she was going to be a party of the working poor. Actually, welfare spending policies have nearly all continued on exactly the same path that she inherited. And what we aren't seeing is the rebalancing tax welfare policies to encourage people at the bottom.
He tried that with national insurance contributions of
and he's had 3 different policies and has ended up with no policy.
And he got slapped down by his own party.
I think to be, if you were going to be fair to Hammond, though, you would say
this is a role reversal here.
You would say that the Treasury's also got a lot on its plate with preparing for Brexit. So that's something that will be focusing minds, I suppose.
I think they're too ready to use the Brexit excuse.
I mean, there may well be some of that, but I do think that what we're seeing in the papers today, these attacks on Hammond, these attacks on Boris. Philip Hammond made a very strong critique of Boris Johnson in the Daily Mail and on the Today programme this morning. We're now looking at one of the main, it's been a long-standing dividing line in the cabinet between Boris Johnson and the Brexiteers and Philip Hammond, who previously supported Remain. And I think this is just one of the big cleavages we're going to be seeing.
I mean, he says in his interview in the Mail, Philip Hammond says, "Look, I'm a details man." Boris Johnson, isn't it? You need details man.
Well, look, if you're going to make a big claim that you're the details man, don't introduce one national insurance policy, retreat on it, introduce another one, retreat on it. That was a key pledge, one of very few pledges that the Tories made at the last election to help the working poor, and it's been abandoned. So one thing I'll be looking at, lunchtime when Philip Hammond gets up to speak, is he going to rectify that? Is he going to do something, for example, motorists who are paying more and more to fill up the tank at the moment? What is he going to do for those people who really are struggling to get by? He's not talking to them at the moment. The party isn't talking to them.
And I think the thing that Hammond actually will best be remembered for looking back is he's carried on with the Osborneomics. He's carried on with deep cuts to benefits, to tax credits that really hit low-income working families with children.
Are you up for this festival of whatever it is? And I'm not quite sure what it's a festival of.
Brexit Britain, I think.
Well, Chris Wilkins, former speechwriter to Theresa May, was on the Westminster Hour on Radio 4 last night, and he's the uber loyalist to Theresa, and he noted that this was an idea that came forward when he was working still at Number 10, and they rejected it. They thought it was... So it just kind of reinforces the idea that stale ideas are winning the day too much in the party at the moment.
But okay, the Dome was a disaster, but the Olympics were pretty good.
Run by Boris Johnson, Mr. Philip Hammond,
it's a bit superficial, isn't it? I have to say, I'm with the Ben Jennings cartoon that we flashed up earlier, sort of, line up for your tin timbola and get some tin food. It's not going to wash with the voters. But they're looking for big ideas in the Conservative Party. I think a sort of Millennium Dome style festival just isn't going to cut it.
Okay, thank you both very much indeed. Nice to see you. Something that I know Tim and I have